Hey everyone, Kuro the artist here. Season 1 of Alien Force paved the way for the future of Ben 10, with the introduction of story arcs, the characters maturing, and slowly building a supporting cast. But now that the foundation has been laid, Season 2 starts to grow the world they've established even more by expanding upon these ideas. We're past having to introduce or even reintroduce concepts into the show, and now it's time for the main course, and see the results of everyone's previous interactions and relationships, and how the trio functions as a team now that they're all used to each other. But there's plenty of new stuff too. Ben has new abilities, the Hybrid has new abilities, Darkstar has new abilities, and also this season has some of the strongest, most memorable episodes. The humor feels better, the action is intense, and it all leads up to arguably the best finale ever pulled off by the franchise. And it all starts off incredibly strong with the episodes Alone Together and Darkstar Rising. If this is your first breakdown and you'd like to know how my rating system works, there's a detailed description down below along with the link to all of my previous breakdowns. But by all means, continue watching this video, I'm sure you might enjoy it. But first, I'd like to give a major shout out to Yawa Ertz, who brought the 5YL Omnitrix to life. This caught me completely by surprise, but I couldn't be happier. This is such a cool thing to see. Not even just the Omnitrix, but the video showing off how she did it looks so professional. I'm very impressed. I'd love to get my hands on one if possible. Go check out the video, I'll link it below. And in the vein of shoutouts, I'd also like to thank Maddie from the Watchtower database. I just recently did a collab with them giving my thoughts on the classic series on their channel, but during preparation for that video, Maddie actually found these bobbleheads. If you're a much older fan like I am, you might recognize these as some of the first merch made for Alien Force, period. In fact, if I recall correctly, the design for these bobbleheads leaking was the way the public was first notified that these aliens even exist. There was also a Big Chill and Alan bobblehead made too. I just think it's really cool to have these. I remember seeing low-res JPEGs of these when I was like 11, so it's really neat to see them in person. I'll probably keep them in the packaging for the most part, but I can't resist just taking them out and having a good look at them. And lastly, it looks like testing for Multiverses, the Warner Brothers fighting game, has resumed, so you know, push for the Ben 10 Multiverses hashtag if you can. Shout it out on Twitter, or I'll link the Multiverses Discord and Reddit in the description. And if you have a spare $5, join our Patreon and check out updates for 5YL Recalibrated in preparation for the motion comic. I post about 1 or 2 of these a week, sometimes even 3 if I'm feeling it. And yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get started. The second season premiered on October 17th, 2008, with the episode Alone Together, written by future Omniverse co-showrunner and the wife of Dwayne McDuffie, Charlotte Fullerton. Ben and a hybrid named Riney are teleported away to a desert planet and must fight together to survive. During their journey home, Ben teaches Riney to have compassion for humans and all the lesser beings that the hybrid normally look down upon, and Riney does everything in his power to resist seeing that Ben is right. But we're immediately greeted with a new power from the hybrid, the ability to shoot off his fingers like projectiles and practically instantaneously regrow them. Sort of plays into their plant-like nature when you think about it, although they are very tricky to see in the dark atmosphere. But these little flashes here to show their impact really helps. I got it covered! Excellent dodging skills from Ben. Need a decent amount of arm strength to land a sweep like that. A nice rushing action sequence to introduce the transformation. And now he also has his new voice. He speaks in a higher register now, and it's much easier to understand. I feel like the first voice that D gave him also made him difficult to speak with it, nonetheless be understood.
Hey, are you okay? Going somewhere? Hey, I'm all over it!
These little guys have excellent agility too. Look at that, it's a chrono arch. It's almost exactly like Paradox's. So I wonder if Paradox's design is a standard look for this type of portal, or perhaps Paradox's blueprints have been replicated. Pretty sure one shows up during the Agrigor arc too.
Don't let him get in that thing, it's a teleporter pod!
Or on that note, that's a standard look for a teleporter pod, and Paradox reworked his into a chrono arch. It's a desert, but it's a pretty different kind of desert from what we standardly get. The shading is using a slight yellow tint. Not too often we get different colored palettes for Alien Force. You can tell where the mouth flaps were placed upon the original base because the shadows are overlapping his headline. That is some serious height.
Was that an earthquake? Whoa!
This is a little silly how he drifts completely horizontally. Well, look at that. He gets slapped on the back and then clones. Get it? And this layer right here of Echo just slides into frame and starts shrinking down. We get a lot of long snake-like aliens in Ben 10 too. There was that creature from the Null Void, slam worms coming up in Omniverse. We got this guy right here, Serpent, technically. It's funny hearing Ben call him Hybrid because he doesn't yet know his name, although hybrids usually call them humans or scum, so it's kind of the same thing. That's very neat. He's directing his shockwaves to ripple down his entire body instead of just shooting it forward. This is a very interesting use of his powers. Dab on him. His proportions are a little bit more humanoid than normal.
A Dravik.
Dravik. I'll try to remember that.
Then we better get off.
So Classic and UAF usually have the Omnitrix and eyes and whatnot react to the same lighting and shading as the atmosphere, whereas Omniverse and the reboot treat it like a glowing light source. Which way do y'all prefer the Omnitrix to be? Leave your opinions in the comments.
You couldn't defeat it alone. Our only hope, fight together.
I'm glad they're getting the we should team up out of the way as early as they can. If they spent the whole episode trying to learn that they need to team up, that would make it feel like it dragged on.
How do we get off this planet?
Teleporter relay station.
Where is it?
Impossible to tell.
You, maybe.
This is definitely the most we've heard Echo talk so far. I always think it's neat when you get to hear Ben have casual conversations in his alien form, or basically anything outside of the fighting, really. It's just neat to see how these creatures are in casual standards. Another excellent use of his power. Ben must really be practicing with these aliens off screen.
Yokai disgusts me.
Echo getting itchy is interesting. Itching is essentially when your skin gets irritated and is reacting to something. At least to some writers in his initial concepts, Echo is living sound waves inside of some containment suit. But the fact that he can feel itching sensations is a point towards him being more of a natural organic creature. Or perhaps a point towards Duncan's theory that all of the aliens have a little bit of Ben still inside of them. Like I said, it's always neat to think about these creatures and their everyday lives and how they function and all that.
I will not allow such a filthy creature spend a single moment longer in my presence.
I can take care of that.
So many new things introduced in this episode. Ben is manually causing him to transform back to human. To reiterate something I may have mentioned in a previous breakdown, I believe it was Dwayne who claimed that whenever Ben is transforming back from alien to human in Alien Force, he is timing out, and the times that it seems like he's doing it on purpose is just a coincidence. I don't necessarily think that's the case with scenarios like in Be Knighted, when Ben seemingly transformed back to human on purpose, although mentally.
Oh, I don't really look like this.
See?
But this demonstrates him literally using the Omnitrix to transform back to human on his own command. So perhaps, at least from this point forward, Ben is shown to have much more of a mastery on the Omnitrix, which I prefer. I like to see the other functions of the Omnitrix beyond just the activation. Although you can see him fade in from transparency here.
I'm really just a plain old human.
That is even worse. You must keep 10 paces behind me at all times.
Man, this hybrid just loves making things difficult for no reason.
10 paces.
Is that because he's Ben 10?
Odd enough for you?
Yes.
I wasn't really asking, it's just an expression.
Get used to having to explain your jokes early, Ben, because once you meet Rook, that's gonna be half of y'all's dialogue.
It is obviously hot. I do not see the point of reiterating what we both already know.
I think we all can be like Riney here when we're in a bad mood. Very good animation too. Makes you wonder what their skeleton must look like, if they have a skeleton at all, which now that I think about it, they probably might not.
The one true species thrives in a much cooler climate.
His comment about the one true species, I think that's our first real allusion to what their master plan is, because they've always been like, oh, we're the best species and whatnot. Something about that phrasing, it implies it's something more. That always looked refreshing to me. Also, we're now seeing a different type of breath effect for Big Chill when we initially saw it in Kevin's big score.
What's that? Water.
Your powers of deduction are truly staggering.
Hey, he's showing some sarcasm. That's a bit of personality. Good for you, Riney.
I'll bring some back for you.
How does he expect to bring some back? Maybe scoop some up in his wing or whatever? Turns out it's a Dravik. Aw, gross. So does that mean this is his saliva or something? When we come back from commercial, all of it is gone and not visible on the ground anymore. This is a really nice animation. Big Chill's wings unfolding has never looked bad so far. Although his intangibility effect looks slightly different. Or maybe just because it's the first time we're seeing it in a lighter atmosphere. But this inner glow effect, has that always been part of it? Oh yeah, it looks like something's there. But against this yellow, it's a lot more obvious. That fold up still looks fine, but very quick. It's like a whoop.
Was a trap.
Do you think Big Chill's strong enough to lift up the hybrid and just fly him to the teleporter? Pretty sure Jet Ray is. Doesn't seem like Riney would be on board for it right now. Ben could just turn into Jet Ray, grab him, and force him to, I guess. Or maybe it's best to just avoid the conflict and do it the long way.
Let's move.
Cannot issue commands to me.
Rainy is so damn stubborn right now. I never noticed he was like shaking violently throughout this scene. He's really suffering without that water. Although he doesn't look as shriveled up as before. He does look kind of shorter though.
Freeze him from inside now.
Big Chill's got some great hearing to be able to hear Rainy from inside the Dravik. One of my least favorite things to draw is giant ice sculptures like this, but this is animated so cleanly. Love how this is turning out. Props to whoever did this. Does not look easy. Probably drains him even more to have to regrow his fingers when he fires them. I love this a lot. I think this is a really cool part of the hybrid. I think this is the only episode you see it though. You can tell it's an extra slimy texture because they shade it using a blue or a purple hue while everything else is shaded with yellow. So is his face as well. It's a barely noticeable thing. The color that you shade in also plays a lot into like texturing and atmosphere. That was something I was very stubborn to use as an artist. I always thought it'd be fine to just shade in black, and you know, it works. But shading with color, it gives it that extra push, whether you notice it or not. Also a nice detail, water filling back up through the holes which he just dug. 2 suns, so it's extra hot there. I'm surprised Ben's not sweating. Like when I lived in the south, it would be like 112 degrees and I would feel like that's unbearable. But with 2 suns, you know, Ben's holding up pretty well for himself. He doesn't even seem that hungry.
Did you hear something?
That's a very big jump from these being traditional to CG. CG doesn't look too bad, but when you immediately switch from traditional to CG, you can definitely see the difference. I'm loving this sunlight though. They also changed their shading color to match. I can't tell if this is just gray or slightly bluish. It might be different shadings for each individual colors, because even if this is bluish, Ben's skin doesn't look slightly bluish. Some shading palettes are individually chosen for every single color, while others are all one color blended onto the character. I guess it just depends on what you're going for, because sometimes some colors just don't look good on others. Like, no matter what shading color I'm using, I always shade things that are supposed to be made of gold or look golden with its own special shading palette, regardless of anything I'm using, just because it looks better that way. I guess it all depends on what you're going for. Thesapoda hippopotamus. Ugh, I would not like that.
Fire!
It's my boy. No, Echo would probably have been more useful. This sand texturing is good too. I'm really loving the backgrounds in this episode. Even the sand, although it's animated, it's layered with the same background texture as the not moving backgrounds to properly blend it. No solid outlines either, just shading. That's really going the extra mile. Yeah, all this, that's nice. Omnitrix is a bit wonky right here though.
Unhand me! I was saving you!
Another time of day, another background palette. Although the shading on the characters appears to be the same as the last palette, the background is definitely different. Also, now that it's been obviously much longer than he should have timed out, it really does make you question whether he has a time limit at all. I'm pretty sure Dwayne also said like Ben would continuously time out and then turn back into an alien over and over again off screen, which I don't know about that. I feel like he probably just got caught up in trying to maintain a congruent continuity between the show and all of the answers he gives. That sometimes you just can't plan for intricacies like that, and you will inevitably contradict yourself. Happens to me all the time with 5YL. That's why I feel like unless I've said it recently or it's addressed in the comic, it's probably not true anymore.
Set up camp for the night.
Oh, I like how the shadows are moving. Although the fire isn't given that much more light than what's already there. I like the soft shading on him too. Alien Force does that a lot too. Sometimes a little bit too much, but does give it that extra subtle dimension.
Oh, really?
Damn, Swampfire is tall. Wasn't Humongousaur as tall as a hybrid too? Maybe he's shrinking because of the lack of water.
The cool night air has begun to restore me.
Or maybe not. It's very subtle, but you can see that the background wiggles behind the fire. You ever looked at fire and around it, it looks a little wiggly and distorted? That's such a specific detail to include. Fire's also slightly transparent as well. Rainy and Ben also have yet another different color palette based on the fire. Good shit, fam.
It's a tradition.
For what?
My name is Ben Tennyson.
I am called Ryan Rosset III, seventh son of the noble hybrid house of Dirana, direct descendant of the pure-blooded High Order of Rosset, heir to the...
I'm gonna call you Riney.
Kind of the same joke with Milius that they just did last episode, actually. I wonder if him and Milius ever get to finish. As beautiful as this episode is, it's not a great one for the Omnitrix, at least.
Thanks to this, I get to walk a mile in other life forms' shoes, so I can totally understand what it's like to be them.
That plays into one of the original intentions of the Omnitrix, mentioned in Secret of the Omnitrix by Azimuth.
I created the Omnitrix to help all the beings of the universe grow closer together.
I like that Ben appreciates the gift he has using the Omnitrix in that way as well. It could easily just be the cool superhero watch thing, but Ben really does care for all of these beings and species within the watch, and thus gives him a relatability to everything else in the universe. He's like a universal nexus for perspective. I also like how the sand has got some of that red reflection from the fire in there.
Genetically inferior creature.
I don't... What?
Ben is just so broken by his ignorance. I mean, I would be too, but Rhiney was brought up in a very irrational lifestyle. You can tell Rhiney really does believe everything he's saying, and it's not just some biased hatred. Like, his whole species is centered around the idea of seeing everything else inferior. Doesn't exactly justify it, but you can see, at least in Rhiney's perspective, it is all about true purpose and what it really means to be a hybrid. It's neat to see him try to rationally explain his prejudices. Hell, people still are trying to do that today.
You and I are more than mere enemies. Hybrids were the very first race in the universe.
Oh, this is the episode where we get they're the first race backstory.
You can't really believe all that. Not after everything we've been through.
I love that Ben's addressing it directly like that. Because it's true, like, after all of this, how could you still believe that? But it's just really that ingrained into Rhiney's lifestyle. It's nothing short of arrogant.
When you weren't trying to kill me.
See how he doesn't deny that? Was Ben really trying to kill him at the beginning of this episode? He's reacting like, good point. I was trying to kill you.
You are tired, human. I shall take the first watch.
But look at that. He immediately follows that up with a semblance of compassion. It seems now like Rhiney's just doing everything he was taught because he doesn't know anything else. And he's afraid that Ben is changing him.
Oh no, I'm wide awake.
It doesn't look like Rhiney's eyes are shaded, even though they're in the shaded area. Going back to talking about how the Omnitrix would glow no matter what light it was in. Seems like they're doing that with Rhiney, but they don't do it with Ben. I think this is a bigger one than what they saw earlier, or it could be an entirely different creature. It's good you can see inside of his hand too, and it's not just like a censored black circle or whatever. But it's probably just because he's so alien and monstrous that the censors allow it. There's no way they would show this if he was human. Ooh, it's twitching too. Also, one of the rare times in the early seasons Ben doesn't shout his name. Kind of a new power for Swampfire as well. This episode's full of surprises.
It was in my own interest to stop that creature from harming you.
Well, it's in my interest to help anybody who needs it.
Why can't Ben always be like this? But Rhiney lost his hand trying to save Ben, regardless if he admits to it or not. That's something he definitely would not have done at the beginning of this episode. I love that his change is slow, and they're giving reason for it. They're not just spending time together, and over time they like each other. Like, things are happening in this episode between them that are forcing them to have a stronger connection with each other. Another Dravik. I could see why nobody lives on this planet. This track is repeated a few times. I recognize it from when the Dagon's being revealed.
This is a huge thing. A sign of personal growth.
Proof that underneath it all, hybrids aren't really so bad.
All very true, and again, I appreciate that Ben's acknowledging it. It's basically breaking down this episode for me. And now he finally accepts it.
There it is! Come on!
I shall remain here. I have spent too long with you, Ben Tennyson.
I love that he calls him Ben Tennyson. Also, I should have pointed this out a lot earlier, but Rhiney here is voiced by Richard McGonigal, who voiced Four Arms in the original series. A lot of hybrid are voiced by Richard, but this is the first time we've really seen the identity of one, like a name and his... Well, I mean, they all kind of have the same personality, but Rhiney doesn't anymore.
I become infected by your mongrel influence, and am now myself unclean.
That's kind of heartbreaking.
Why stay here?
In self-imposed exile.
Like, he doesn't have to live his life like that. He feels like it's wrong that he's seeing the other side of things now.
Because all lesser beings other than pure, unadulterated hybrids must be expunged from the universe.
See, now he's saying the same thing he always says, but it hits differently. Because you're really getting that. Even though he's accepted that he's not like that anymore, he still feels like it's wrong and he'll be shamed by his kind. While we clearly see that everything is okay, that's just something he can't wrap his head around. And not to derail this breakdown into an entirely different thing, but if you're watching this and you can clearly see that the hybrid foregoing his old ways because there's a greater, more accepting truth out there, and it's frustrating that he just can't seem to accept that. Perhaps there's some greater truths that you yourself are having a hard time accepting, and if you looked outside of your perspective, outside of your world, things don't have to be so black and white.
I thought I had gotten through to you.
This much is true, and now I must pay the price.
It's also such a good ending too, in a way. I don't really like using the term realistic that much because that implies that when situations aren't realistic, it's bad. When I praise something for being realistic, it's because it adds an additional flavor to the context of the scene. And sometimes things really are just like that. You don't get a happy ending, at least not immediately. A change that big from one perspective to another may take a lot of time. Hell, it's something Kevin's still struggling with. Despite him being a part of the team now, he still has his old habits of being a criminal. But Riney is an all-around great character, and I love that he's being written as a character, and not just, look at how bad the bad guys are.
I can't make it work.
Oh yeah, they're here. Looks like no time has passed for them at all. Either that or it's been an entire day and they're still here. And here he comes. That sounds like the opening sting to the Ultimate Alien theme.
Did he get away?
I doubt it.
And this last scene too, the episode could have just ended with Ben back on Earth and everything's fine. But we still cut back to Riney and see him reflecting on his choice, showing that his perspective is still in flux, and the episode ends. So this episode is mostly looked back on by fans as one of the best episodes of Season 2, or maybe Alien Force in general. There's never gonna be a universal opinion on anything in Ben 10, but most people have come to really appreciate this episode because of the dynamic between Riney and Ben. For the plot specifically, I'm still just gonna give it a 3. It's not your typical bad guy teams up with good guy, and either the bad guy turns good fully, or they go their separate ways and the bad guy's still evil. This one ends with the bad guy in a moral flux, where he has this internal struggle between the entire lifestyle he was brought up in versus a new truth he has discovered, where everything might not be as it seems. He ends the episode saying, "Even though I like you, Ben, I still think all vermin must die, and therefore I'm flawed." You get the sense that he doesn't entirely believe it. And while this episode does great between Ben and Riney, it is broken up by a lot of action sequences that do feel a little bit repetitive. There's gotta be obstacles for them to endure, but every time one comes on, you kind of just want to get back to the Ben and Riney stuff, because that's where the real interesting stuff happens, ironically. Usually you want to head towards the action and all the in-between stuff just sets it up, but this episode plays it the opposite. Again, it's still a relatively simple episode, it's just executed very nicely. The characterization though, I feel like it has to get a solid 5. Ben is perhaps in his best characterization he's ever been in. I feel like in this episode he's that perfect balance between having his serious and tactical heroic ideologies, but still being laid back and comedic. He has some frustrations, he's got jokes, and he's still just very much Ben Tennyson. And although he's like this throughout all of the first 2 seasons of Alien Force before they dial up the humor a little bit later on, there's not a lot of opportunities where you get to see him be more comedic and humorous, because they're in a lot of very serious plot-dependent scenarios in the first season. So this episode acts as a good breathing space for you to really get to know the character, and which is why I will always advocate against the notion that Alien Force Ben is too boring in personality. If you watch this episode and still feel that way, I'm gonna have to disagree. Riney, again, is also a great character, although I put a lot of my points towards him throughout this breakdown, so I'll just keep it that simple. And while Gwen and Kevin do take a back seat, this episode isn't really about them, so it doesn't feel like they're getting the shaft or anything. It really only needs to be about Ben and Riney. Visuals, I'm going to give it a 4. Even without all the color stuff, there's a lot of animation details in this episode that looks very nice. The imperfections don't overpower any scene, and Terra Wusta, while it is just a desert, it's at least alien enough to look like a different location than an Earth. But while a pro for the characterization is that a lot of this episode is focused on Ben and Riney, it does degrade the visuals a little bit because there's only so much you can do when it's a straightforward conversation. Importance, it has to be a 5. Riney ends up being the whole key that helps Ben convince the hybrid in the season 2 finale that there's another way to go about handling their problems. In fact, without Riney, Ben may never have been able to convince them. He still probably could have cured them, but it wouldn't have ended the war. In fact, it might have made things worse. Now that they'd be healthier and stronger, they would just be more mad at the entire galaxy. So yeah, if you think about it, if this incident didn't happen, there would never be peace between the hybrid and the rest of the galaxy, at least not anytime soon. And entertaining, as much as I've given this praise, I'm only going to give it a 3. It's not as rewatchable as the other ones, and while it's a strong character one, it doesn't have that special Ben 10 feel to it, except for when Ben's talking about the Omnitrix, of course. I feel like that's a very unique Ben 10 sort of of thing. And while I have a lot of love for this episode, it's not the most amazing one out there, and I feel like 3 is a very fair number to give it. That leaves this episode off at a 20 out of 25. That's a pretty good start for the second season. Now let's move on to the next episode. Darkstar Rising dropped October 10th, 2008, written by Dwayne McDuffie. Magister Prior Glil, a high-ranking plumber, comes down to Earth to warn the trio against acting in the name of the plumbers or risk being arrested for impersonating an officer. But the trio agree to keep fighting anyways because without their help, the Earth will succumb to the hybrid invasion. But things get complicated when a masked man going by Darkstar starts pulling all of the strings so he can trap everyone together and steal their power. Kevin's CG car practically looks perfect now. Would not have been able to tell if I wasn't looking for it.
You don't get tips. I got connections, like Gwen.
It's true. He does know me.
I don't know how to explain it, but that's such a Dwayne McDuffie style joke. I like how the angle of these panels are getting slightly more horizontal with each one. Oh, I remember this episode now.
Forever nights.
I like that his hair stops blowing when it gets covered by rock. Although Gwen and Ben's hair isn't blowing. Omnitrix is drawn so well here. Appreciate it while you can. This is the first time we get Chromostone's transformation, right? Fade into the skeletal view. Although his bones don't disappear, they just change shape. Does this mean that Chromostone has bones? Look at that too. He just changes the shape of his skull. He's got some type of cheekbone structure that you don't see on the outside, and these start popping out of his back. You can tell it's growing from the base because it's starting at its maximum width and getting shorter, rather than already existing inside and piercing through the top, or else it would start at this size and you'd see it expand. Dab on him. A lot of detail on that glass. And then his Mega Punch. There it is. See, all that for nothing. This is the third time Ben's used Chromostone and has not done anything. Look at this though. These look like open crates. You can't see any detail outside of the border, but then through the hologram, you do see the detail. Another instance where these backgrounds did have a lot more detail than it's showing, but then the brightness was just turned way down. It's a little sad for the people drawing that stuff.
Holograms.
Very intricate holograms too. Slides into the width of his side.
I'm the commanding officer of this entire quadrant.
So Glil here is voiced by J.K. Simmons. You know, Tenzin, J. Jonah Jameson, Lightning Turtletop. But I'm not gonna lie, I don't think I would have been able to hear that. It's a much calmer version of voice than he normally uses. Even Tenzin doesn't sound this calm sometimes.
You're all under arrest for impersonating officers of the law.
I do hear it a little bit though. See, do you think that transformation was on purpose, or he just timed out? Also, I thought that Labyrinth suit had one of these because he needed some sort of breathing apparatus, so I wonder why McGill has it. Not McGill, Galil, sorry.
I wouldn't threaten a guy who could kick your can halfway up the street and back.
Remember when I was talking about old habits Kevin has in the last episode?
Feeling froggy, son? Then jump.
Ribbit.
I used to think that was so cool. But damn. Also, look how he grabs Kevin's shirt as if it's still cloth. It's supposed to be covered in stone right now. Switching to metal. There we go. Another transformation sequence. Although this one, part of it is reused from his debut episode, The Gauntlet, but then the animation diverges when he starts running forward. It's a great episode for Goop too, despite his helmet emoting with his eyes a lot and reshaping by cartoon physics. When his eyes closed, you do see the holes remain open in the helmet. I also like that this shows how strong Goop is, and he's not just a liquid, he's a very dense liquid. You know, why'd they have to go back on the roof? Although it's neat to see the broken skylight is still there. Continuity and all that.
Because I'm the plumber officer in charge for this whole section of space.
So they got one guy in charge for all of that stuff. But then come Omniverse, they have entire operatives and forces out there. But I mean, the world does get a lot more complicated as the series goes on. So the plumbers were probably lowballing the priorities they needed to give this sector.
You kids passing yourselves off as plumbers.
Gwen and Kevin's hair is blowing, but not Ben's.
You don't even have a claim by blood.
See, that's actually interesting. Because the record should show that Devlin is Kevin's father. You can use this as an excuse to justify the Cervantes arc being right the whole time if you really want to. Because Galil should have on record that he does have a claim by blood.
Yes, I do. My real father was... Never mind.
There's a reason we shut down plumber operations on Earth 5 years ago.
Actually, in the classic series, they were already shut down. Unless you count the handful of operatives that were active during, you know, Race Against Time.
Magister is a rank, not a name.
It's not outright stated, but you can tell he's a Magister by the amount of stripes when he points to his shoulder.
There is no evidence of significant alien activity here.
then those reports are definitely wrong. Also, I just remembered the plumbers were actually coming out of being shut down during that flashback in Omniverse. Quite the opposite of what Magister Galil is saying right here. But, you know, just chalk that up to the universe being reset, as you can with anything.
Ben, you wear the Omnitrix. The Galvin have requested that you not be interfered with in minor matters.
So the Galvin have some sort of authority over the plumbers. I wonder if this is on purpose, that he has 2 different dots on his shoulders. Maybe that was supposed to mean something.
Give me the badge you stole.
Please.
Now. I don't care what Azimuth says.
Oh, you hear that? Azimuth has been name dropped. I think this is the first time he's referred to by name in Alien Force. His suit can do so many different things. Back at Mr. Smoothie.
How does turnip and wheatgrass sludge make anything better?
Not gonna lie, I'd still try it. In fact, if you haven't seen our Heat Blasted Chili video, I'd suggest checking that out. If that does well enough, Ash and I are considering doing more things like making all the Mr. Smoothie flavors in real life. That's right. Maybe one day I'll drink a grasshopper smoothie for real. We'll see. Lamb and sardine, fill me up.
Find the aliens, fight the bad guys.
My goodness. Although if we do it, I can't promise it will be this color. Maybe we can dye it or something.
Badges? We don't need no stinking badges.
That's another reference to something. What was it, Blazing Saddles?
Badges? We don't need no stinking badges. Oh, no.
I want to be a plumber, okay? My mom would tell me stories about my dad.
I never met your dad.
Me either.
Now, we know that gets contradicted in Vendetta, but Dwayne has also said that Kevin was lying in this scene, and even encourages you to watch it again as if that was planned from this episode.
Never met your dad.
Me either.
I guess I could kind of see it, but I wouldn't watch this and instantly be like, oh yeah, he's lying.
It's why I agreed to help you guys in the first place.
I do like that reasoning, though. The more reasons you give for Kevin joining their side, the more plausible it seems. Kevin joins them because he wants revenge on the Forever Knights and to be like his dad as a plumber, and Ben does it because he allegedly had a dream about where Kevin and Ben are friends in the future, but that comes up in Ultimate Alien.
Mostly.
Oh yeah, he also joins because he wants to be with Gwen. I think this is one of the ships we saw in Ben 10 Returns Part 2. The transport ship, they call it. Oh right, it's him. I love the way his energy looks. Not just because it's negative, but it also has those little sparkles around it. Kind of a small hint that he's really Michael Morningstar. Super strength, though. We don't really see him do stuff like that too often, do we? And these rifles as well. I don't think we've seen these before. Usually they're using the laser lances. That was effortless. They're really selling how dangerous he is.
What insignificant alien speck?
Oh, that's definitely Paul Eiding. I don't even have to check.
Nice shot.
Yeah, does Michael only have super strength in this episode? I can't recall another time they display him doing shit like this. This is new, too. Season 2 is just handing out new things left and right.
Show me all of your power.
I can definitely hear that's Michael, but when I first watched this, I couldn't tell. I wasn't that good at picking up voices as a kid. Oh, I like this little energy ripple as he succumbs to Darkstar's power. Also turns in black and white. We've seen characters with many a laser before, but Darkstar's definitely looks unique to him. Look at this. He's even got a white outline when you see him through his power.
I want to make a deal.
Who's that second car? This is the garage Kevin lives in. I love how that's always consistent, but whose car is this? Maybe he's taking up deals to help afford his bills and whatnot, and he just works on random people's cars. See, now this is a very nicely made background. It's pretty detailed and I can actually see everything.
Thanks anyway.
It's not a smoothie.
Oh, it's from Burger Shack. Have we seen that yet? I don't think Burger Shack and chili fries has been introduced quite yet.
Regular soda.
Yeah, okay.
You know, we never get many scenes with Gwen and Kevin completely alone. Usually Ben's there, so they don't get to be extremely direct with their feelings towards each other. Not that they are right here, but you can tell whatever guard Kevin has up when Ben's around, he doesn't have when it's just Gwen.
I brought you a present.
Oh, this was such a unique idea.
Absorb it. How about this one? It's a ball bearing made out of, I don't know, ball bearing stuff.
Stainless steel.
See, I feel like if writers were just phoning it in, Gwen would obviously know what that was because, you know, Gwen is smart, therefore she knows everything. But here's a little moment of vulnerability. Gwen doesn't know something, and then to contrast that, it's something that Kevin is an expert in. But it's not even played for laughs, or it's not like a big significant thing. It's just a small little touch upon these characters, and I appreciate that.
That way when we're in a fight, you can change to whatever you want.
I need a lot of whatever I'm copying.
Oh.
Yeah, if it worked out, it would have been a neat idea, and it's very sweet of Gwen to think of that. But to get all those balls together, like, you know, wooden balls aren't exactly common. And even so, finding one that's the same size as the ball bearing and, you know, whatever else she's got in there, she probably had to make a couple of them herself. Oh, so close.
Looks like I picked the wrong day to give up fighting monsters.
Very, very nitpicky, but since he's absorbing the black stripe on his car, shouldn't he be getting coated in black paint? Although at that point, he'd be impossible to see.
It's a hybrid.
You can see Kevin's car right here. I read somewhere that Kevin's car was originally going to be red, and this was an Easter egg of that, but I don't feel like finding the source. I could just be misremembering. Also, look at this. Kevin, when he absorbs the car, never does anything with it, and then just immediately switches to road. I think it's really cool he absorbs as he goes, but like, why'd he absorb his car? In fact, earlier, he switched from stone to metal and got stronger. So doing the reverse, of course, he'd get tanked by this hybrid right here. It looks like whatever ripple effect they do for the hybrid's hand's impact gets cropped a very strange way when the effect's applied. That's a pretty good shatter animation. Choo-choo. Nice. Good stuff.
Why don't you pick on somebody your own size?
Speaking of voice changes, Humongosaur's voice is a lot less monstery now.
I'll hold him off. You guys get outside! He's going to do it now, unless I stop him. Trust me, this beats the alternative. I wouldn't if I were you.
See, right there, D's using the voice he does for Diamond Head.
That's right. You do. I wouldn't if I were you.
That's why not just doing the voices, but applying the right digital effects and filters matters too. Really helps diversify things, especially if you got one guy doing 10 plus voices.
He's attacking the Earth! Sure, kid. They attacked me for no reason!
Doesn't Galil know who the hybrid are? Magister Labrid knew about Max's escapades trying to hunt down the hybrid, and Labrid seemed to have some semblance of knowledge on what the D and aliens were. But not knowing about the hybrid combined with not knowing about Devon, who at this point is, I guess, supposed to be canon, maybe Labrid just doesn't read the files. And he's just bullshitting his way through everything. He did say he had over 300 planets to watch over, so, you know, some stuff slips under the radar. Not to mention that it's said in multiple episodes since Max out that Max's death has been reported on across the entire universe because of how significant it was. So are we saying that the reports about Max's death didn't actually include how he died? And even if it did, nobody asked why? I don't know. Whatever. It doesn't matter.
Nobody's going anywhere.
I really love Darkstar's costume here.
You promised that if I helped you...
I can't be trusted.
I like how Gwen's the only one that's able to refute his power. Oh, and he's growing. So Darkstar's powers are now being amplified. So he's strong enough to take down Humongosaur and force Ben to transform back.
Are you? How did you?
This was really intense when I first watched it as a kid. I was like, this guy is crazy. And again, at this point, I still don't know it was Michael. I literally didn't know until Ben found out later. I wasn't really trying to figure it out either. I thought he was a new character.
Gwen, run! Run!
Nice. Oh, that's neat.
You can't run forever, lovely Gwen.
Yeah, see, that should have given away it was Michael. I don't know how I didn't pick up on that. And here, too. This is the same location as the episode he appeared in.
That's the guy who tipped me off that you were impersonating plumbers.
So Darkstar's been pulling strings this whole time. Although it's hard to believe that these chains are really holding them back. Kevin could probably absorb the chains and break out, and the hybrids are just that strong.
I know who he is.
I like the little lightning flickers that appear in this energy filter.
Michael. The creep who tried to steal Gwen from...
I never caught this till right now, but you can actually see him blush, and it's still there until he calms down right here. But with all this energy going on, it's very easy to miss.
I am Darkstar.
You know, if he was strong enough to hold down Ben, Kevin, a hybrid, and a plumber, and he's not even in his regular, nonetheless golden form, combined with the super strength, Darkstar was super OP in this episode. It's a shame we don't really get that in his later appearances.
Michael! I swear you were better looking when we used to go out.
They were barely together, though, unless their relationship was developed more off-screen in that episode.
They're pretty mad about you kidnapping their boss.
They're very jumpy in this episode. See? Maybe this field was repressing his powers like some sort of meta dampener or something, but I don't know. Seems like you could have done that earlier. Yeah, look, he's even got Magister Labrid's water tank. Perhaps this guy is some sort of aquatic creature too.
What about me?
Hang in there.
Smart. Oh yes, this beautiful sequence. See, now this feels like a powerful explosion of sound. Sometimes Echo Echo just gently lets out his sound. But I like how he lets it out here with like a big force, an alien force, so to speak. Although, because you still see the rings in this shot and then immediately cuts to Spider Monkey up here and you don't see him change, when I first saw this, I was like, is this a different Ben or a different Omnitrix user? But yeah, this is the very first instance we see Prime Ben change from one alien to another on purpose without the master control. He's just that good with the Omnitrix now. And an amazing sequence too. Look at how far they stretch that leg, and it's really quick too. It's like a snap. It's hard to tell until the light flashes, but you see Ben still up here, falling in the air. Kevin smacks him back up, and I've always loved this shot right here. Spider Monkey flips around and changes into Jet Ray. Darkstar's getting creamed, and one more change. But since Ben shatters all the windows here, but we do see this location later on, that means Michael went through the trouble of replacing his windows.
Tired.
Seems like all those quick changes really exhausted him. There are moments where Ben transforms back seemingly just because he's exhausted, so after the Omnitrix recalibrates, his time limit is more linked to the Omnitrix's energy or Ben's own stamina, and not just a strict 10-minute time limit.
Everything spinning.
He's missing the back tuft of his hair right here though, and his shoulder stripes too. See, because they're reusing the same background from earlier, the windows are already repaired.
You've been drafted. Here's your badge back.
So Magisters have the authority to recruit people to be a plumber. In fact, I'm pretty sure Rook does that to Festina. Was Rook a Magister when he did that? I don't know. Omniverse breakdowns are long into the future, so we'll find out eventually.
You're the only law in the quadrant.
So Ben is officially inducted as a plumber here, but Ben's status as being an official plumber always goes back and forth throughout the series. It's just whatever's convenient. Oh, you can see these two grass tufts are the same.
Where are you going? I gotta tell my mom.
That's so sweet. Good for you, Kevin. All right, on to the return of Michael into the alias Darkstar. I'm gonna start off by giving him the plot of 3. Kind of like the last episode, it's pretty average of a plot. Well executed, but nothing special. Although I do really like that we got a lot more of a foundation on how the plumbers are intergalactically. While in comparison to everything we've seen so far, it doesn't really seem to fit with the classic series plumbers. And although that's how plumbers have been in Alien Force so far, this episode really hammers home that the plumbers of what we thought they were on Earth are nothing like how they are out in space. But given that this is how plumbers are treated for the next 3 series, it does start to sort of isolate the classic series plumbers and make them the outlier. And while the hybrid does get dragged into the scenario, I like that he doesn't end up teaming up with the characters. Not only because it wouldn't really make sense, but also we just did that in the last episode. But I do like how Gwen did find a way to use the DNA aliens against Michael. It provided the perfect distraction for her to free the team. Characterization, it's also gonna get a 3. Pretty standard for all of the characters. Everyone was written pretty well, but nothing really stands out. While there are episodes where Michael really shines as a character, I wouldn't say this is one of them. He's absolutely cool. His powers are awesome, and I love that he's just this twisted, tortured soul, but I wasn't really getting much from him in this episode. Same with the hybrid and Magister Galil to an extension. That one scene with Kevin and Gwen was great, but that's about as far as we get for how deep this character stuff really goes. And while we do have a lot of focus on Kevin's ambition to be a plumber like his dad, it does feel like it comes out of nowhere a little bit, and it doesn't even line up to what we find out later on in the future. Not just in Omniverse or even Ultimate Alien, but I mean the next season when we find out about Ragnarok and all of that. So it's just a little weird. It's hard to really let it resonate with Kevin. It's a motivation for the sake of motivation, but you know, at least for right now it fits. Visuals, it's gonna get another 3. We're back to nighttime Alien Force style, but that fight at the end where we first see Ben switching from alien to alien, it's just super cool to see. I've already given a lot of praise to Darkstar's powers too, but come on, they're just fantastic. They're so unique, and it's such a refreshing breath of air that everybody's lasers looking the same, except maybe being a different color.
Actually, for those very same reasons, I actually want to give it a 4. All the action and fight scenes were great in this episode. You know, Goop versus Galil, that was pretty dope too, and the animation was pretty much on point. It's just, it's not overall fantastic enough for a 5, but I feel like a 4 is more fair than a 3 for this.
Importance, I was struggling a lot on this, but I do think it deserves a 5. All of Darkstar's appearances in the future are pretty significant, plus it's the first introduction of Ben being officially deputized as a plumber, which, when it matters, it does come into play, and also, you know, this being the introduction to the quick change feature. But entertaining, it just makes a 4. It's got a lot of cool stuff happening in it, but always in micro bits. It just feels like cool scene after cool scene, and while there are plot reasons why it's all connected, I wouldn't say it's the story that holds this together, and more of just the things that happen in the story, if that makes sense. That leaves this episode off at a 19 out of 25. I gotta say, I feel like season 2 is a step in the right direction in every way. It's a lot more exciting, and everyone's characterization is the best it's ever been, and I'm excited to start watching these episodes again as breakdowns come, as I'm still getting back into the vein of making making these breakdowns. I don't have much else to say right now, but I will at least announce this week's poll. As you might know, I've been going in production order, the way in which the writers developed these episodes, versus airing order, the way in which the public received these episodes when they premiered on Cartoon Network. In production order, Alone Together is the season 2 premiere, but in airing order, Darkstar Rising is the season 2 premiere. So I'd like to ask, which episode do you think makes a better season 2 opener? Let me know in the community tab after this video goes live. Don't forget to follow the new Ink Tank Twitter account to start keeping up with updates. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend, and as always, keep it fizzy.